Let's talk about UFC 297, the main card, man. What a fight! What a card! Like I think it's one of those cards when you look at it, you're like, man, this is not stacked. It's not going to be fun, you know, comparing to the cards that are coming up and the type of fighters that were on the card. But starting with the main event, Strickland versus Du Plessis. You know, people are saying maybe Sean was robbed, maybe this. I think one thing that Strickland has, and that's a disadvantage to his fight game, is the optics, right? His coach always talks about the optics. His optics, like I think from an MMA perspective, if you are somebody who's into the game, you're like you see what he's doing with those with the defense, with the Philly shell, how he makes shots bounce off his shoulder, how he's not really getting touched. But then the thing is, if you're a judge and what these judges are looking at, they're looking at activity, they're looking at pressure, they're looking at different things that we as fans or even as people who are like, I know what I'm doing. And we probably all don't know how they judge. We don't see those things, right? And when I was looking at the fight, I was like, the first round, you could tell that Strickland was winning because he was jabbing DPP, Dricus Du Plessis, DDP. He was jabbing the crap out of him. But then in the second round, Du Plessis changed. You know, the way the fight was going on was changing. Sean all of a sudden was on the back foot, which is something that he did very well against Adesanya, where with Easy, that whole fight, Easy was on the back foot. Sean was pressuring forward, and optically, that looks as if you are the more dominant fighter. It doesn't necessarily mean you are, but then that's what it looks like. And that's what was happening in the first round, where Dricus was constantly moving backwards and trying to do anything and was getting touched. And then Dricus started making adjustments in the second round, third round, fourth round. But then one thing that I noticed with Strickland's fighting style, especially if you go back and look at the one versus Easy, the way that with Easy it worked for him was he was doing the same thing he was doing versus DDP. But the difference is with Adesanya, he had moments, right? So he had, if you remember in the first round when he hit him with the 1-2 and then went to hell, you know, with the shots, that swung the round for him, right? Because it looked like, oh, he's beating him up. But then in most of the rounds, he remains defensive, right? So Strickland's fight is a defensive fighter who's there to counter you or make you fatigue whilst trying to hit him, and then he hits you back, like what he did with the other Russian guy. So that's the thing that works for him. But it doesn't work against DDP, because with Dricus, he keeps coming at you, whether he's tired or whatever. He's just throwing everything and he's awkward and he's whatever. But then the thing is, Dricus is not a small guy. He's a huge man. So when he steps forward, you have to step back because you don't want to get punched clean by him. Because I feel like if he punches you clean, you are going out. So Strickland knows this and he's a smart fighter. He was checking every kick, but Dricus kept on throwing. And if somebody's ever checked your kicks, you will hate it. So that's what I think happened. But overall, I think Strickland lost because of optics, but he also lost because he wasn't offering much offensively. You know, Dricus with the takedowns. Once someone starts putting in takedowns, those are points going the other way for you in the fight. And I think Strickland didn't respond. Even when his coaches were asking him, listen, we need to move, we need to pick up the pace, we need to do some stuff. It's a challenge because of the thing that's in front of you, right? Like the coaches can tell you stuff, but then it's what you're seeing, it's how this guy's moving. He felt Dricus's power, and you're like, I don't want to be reckless because I can be knocked out, you know. And I think that's how we end up with Strickland losing. In the co-main, you know, it's easy to say you were disappointed because you never want to see that. You never want to see a fighter just laying on the ground doing nothing. Like, I get it, it's taxing, it's 5 rounds, you've been fighting and whatever, but then how it ended, it was like, man, is this a good sight? It's not, you know, but also it's understandable. She gave everything that she had in the first 2 rounds, and then after that, it's just like, man, what do you want me to do? And then another thing was in the other fight with Chris Curtis, you know, in that fight, man, like, Chris Curtis wants to counter punch, and then the other guy's like, I'll do the same thing. And what ends up happening is when you have counter punches or counter fighters, nobody fights, nobody throws because it's, you know, the haymakers that are waiting for you if you lead the dance. But what I liked about it is Chris Curtis then started to push forward, and he was finding success. And then when they just started fighting in the telebooth, you're like, all right, this is reckless. But those type of things are very dangerous because you never know the amount of power your opponent has. And if you're fighting in the telebooth, it's literally just one punch that you don't see that can knock you out. Like what happened with him and Joaquin Buckley, where it's like, okay, you throw a punch and then next thing you're on the ground, you're dead, you know. So it was a tricky fight, but, you know, the action man did his thing. And then with the fight with Mike Malott, I felt like there's a thing that happens in MMA, especially when you start flowing, where everything is just happening for you. You're in this flow state, everything is working for you, and you become also a little bit more overconfident of by demeaning the person that you're fighting, you know. Because the guy was winning the first 2 rounds, and then in the 3rd round, like, one mistake and that's it. And he didn't have answers. He didn't have answers for Magny. Like, you like, bro, all you have to do right now is move your head, do something, hold on to the hips, you know. Because what they teach you when you're doing jiu-jitsu, right, is like if someone has you in mount and you don't want anything tight, be tight to the body, like just go on and hug. But these are high-level grapplers, right? So you're not going to do that. But still, like, I felt for him because it's like you're winning the fight and then you lose it in the final round, in the final minute, which is very tough. But yeah, it was overall a terrible night for Canada. I think every male fighter lost, and shout out to the ladies. I mean, dominant performances by the ladies, and the guys just let us down. Arnold Allen, I mean, that was always going to be a hard fight because you're fighting a wrestler. And the thing is with these guys who know how to wrestle, it's almost difficult because when someone grabs you and how wrestling, they immobilize your body, it's like, damn, man. And then the amount of energy you have to take out to try and get out of a lock, of a wrestling lock. But like, I feel like Arnold Allen did very well. It's tough to see him because that would be 2 losses on the bounce, and you're like, damn, after that whole rise, like, it's a tough thing. But also I think he did good for himself, you know, optically, like he looks good. And yeah, I can't wait to see him come back and hopefully adjust his style, and because people are just getting better. Like MMA, every year you realize fighters are quite different and quite polished, that you just can't throw and hope. You have to be very tactical and you have to be very in there. Overall, I would say it was a great card to watch, man. I didn't watch a lot of fights on the prelims, but like it was very beautiful seeing the things that happened. I mean, people are saying about what's next for DDP. There's a lot of options, you know. The Kamzat fight will be fun to see how their wrestling goes and how just somebody who doesn't give up, you know, does it end up being like Kamzat versus Burns. But also like size-wise, I think Kamzat has always been able to bully people, but with DDP, it's not going to be that easy. And the way DDP is just an awkward fighter, you know. But those are the type of fights where one punch knocks the other guy out. And then you're looking at DDP versus Easy. I think DDP versus Easy will be an interesting fight. I mean, you're looking at masterful tactician versus awkward, does everything his own way type of fighter. I can see either man winning in that fight because with DDP, the way he pressures forward and then with his strength and power, there's a lot of weaknesses that I've seen in Easy, especially in his last 3 fights, where you're like, oh, I see. If you're able to put him in the cage and really go to hammer him, because people often say like, oh, he's good at counter punching and doing these things. The thing is, that stuff only works if the person you're fighting doesn't hit hard, right? Like, so if you saw like what happened with Strickland, right? He got hit with that 1-2. That changes the whole thing, especially with the amount of power that the person has. So if you're trying to counter, but then you get hit, it only takes 2 punches and you're out. So I feel like Easy versus DDP is not as simple as it has always been for him. Like what happened with Costa or even Vettori. I feel like DDP has an opportunity and can beat Easy, but also you can see Easy just outclassing him, you know. So that'll be interesting to see what's next with the next UFC 298. Looking forward to that. I think that's the Volkanovski versus Topuria. That'll be an interesting fight. Let me know in the comment section what you guys thought of UFC 297.